The story of Genshin Impact arguably revolves around the vision holders to some degree. Each of these characters are destined, or at least that's what we're told, to become gods. But at the end of the day, they are still just humans. Humans with jobs, responsibilities, and things to do day to day. A lot of the story and lore that surround them tend to cover more serious topics, so I thought it'd be fun to take a bit of a break from some of the heavier lore and talk about something different. While each individual god candidate has an equal chance of ascending, they all come from different backgrounds. So in this video, let's talk about the richest vision wielders in Genshin Impact. Before we get into that, if you want to see more Genshin Impact content, do consider subscribing to the channel. For the purposes of this particular video, we have to set some ground rules. First is that this only applies to vision wielders or playable characters. I'm sure there are plenty of rich people in each region, but since we don't know much of their lore, we can't make accurate assumptions. Secondly, gods that are still holding their positions as gods will be excluded. Someone like Raiden A wouldn't be a fair choice considering everything in Inazuma is technically hers, since she holds the highest authority. Lastly, this is considering the most current timeline. If we were to look at the past, then someone like Morax, who could just print money with his gnosis, would obviously beat everyone. Let's first start off with the first region we visit in Teyvat, Mondstadt. Of all the characters that hail from Mondstadt, Diluc is likely to be the wealthiest. Most of Diluc's wealth comes from the Dawn Winery, an estate that has been owned by the Rekvinder clan for several generations. The winery is famous for its dandelion wine, but also creates a myriad of other products, such as fruit wines and even non-alcoholic juices. But how could a simple winery make so much money? Well, this is because Mondstadt's economy largely focuses on the production and export of alcohol. The Wine Guild's executive chairman, Elzer, has mentioned that the Dawn Winery is so incredibly successful that it represents a large majority of the wine industry in Mondstadt. So you can imagine if one winery is able to essentially monopolize the main export of an entire region, how much money Diluc essentially stands to make. Plus, Diluc doesn't really focus too much of his efforts on the money-making side of the winery, and his intention is really just to continue the legacy left by his father and his ancestors. So it's likely if he really wanted to, Dawn Winery could end up making way more money given Diluc's personal abilities. Let's move on to the domain of the god of commerce, Liyue Harbor. In a city known for businesses and contracts and the home of Mora itself, there is surely no shortage of rich people. You have the Liyue Qixing, all the leaders in their respective fields, and numerous business owners each trying to come out on top. But I think the richest among the Elogenes might just be Ningguang. While there are many Liyue Qixing and successful business people in Liyue, Ningguang is the only one able to afford a giant floating palace as her office. Not only could she afford this crazy monument to her status, but after losing the first one, she had more than enough money to just build the second one. In fact, during the second time, she outbid most other people for the materials to construct it, to the point that the market completely ran out of these materials altogether. So while people like Keqing, Xingqiu, and Yunjin are from Liyue as well, and are likely to be quite wealthy, I don't think anyone can contest the Tianquan herself. As again, she has a giant floating palace that she paid for with straight up cash. You don't get richer than that. Many also rely on Ningguang as their source of information for future business trends, wishing to get even a glimpse of her jade screen or perhaps a tiny sliver of her shredded research papers. It's even rumored that if you manage this, then you are 100% likely to make a killing. Pair this with her role as the Tianquan, the custodian of all laws passed down by Morax himself, Ningguang isn't only the richest, but essentially is in a position to dictate how business as a whole functions within Liyue. Someone in such a position is likely to be able to make bank in any industry they wish, and why Ningguang is likely the wealthiest. Next up, we have the land of the rising banner sails, Inazuma. Most of Inazuma is governed by the Tri-Commission, a faction made up of 3 different groups that control different aspects of Inazuma's governance. The Tenryo Commission are the military arm of the shogunate, while the Kanju Commission deals in trade and finances. Finally, you have the Yashiro Commission, who are largely in charge of the cultural aspects of Inazuma. Those from these 3 groups are largely the most influential in the Electro Archons region given their roles. After the events of the main story, both the Tenryo and Kanjo Commission have faced some problems due to some of their family heads colluding with the Fatui and internal struggles among its families. Only the Yashiro Commission escaped with an intact reputation and retained most of their family assets. This is what makes Ayato, the head of the Yashiro Commission and Kamisato clan, likely the richest playable character in Inazuma. As the Kamisato clan leader, he holds ownership on several swaths of land in Inazuma and also owns several businesses. Their estate is located near the foot of Mount Yugo and is home to several of their family members and household staff. Ayato isn't someone who flaunts his wealth though, so unlike Ningguang, we can't really guess how much he actually has. Only that he is at the head of one of the most prominent families in Inazuma and 1/3 of its governing body and likely has multiple assets. On top of that, the Yashiro Commission's role is closest to its people and thus any cultural activity is controlled by them. You might think this isn't a big deal, but what this means is that each event or activity that occurs within Inazuma, and there's a lot, is controlled by the Yashiro Commission. This means permits for vendors, external traders wishing to sell things during a particular event, and any cultural activity will need their green light. Plus, with the other clans having internal issues, the Yashiro Commission and thus Kamisato clan has stepped in to provide assistance in other areas such as trade and finances. So in the current setting, Ayato is likely to be an extremely influential and wealthy noble in Inazuma. Finally, we reach the land of the university students, Sumeru. Most of Sumeru's culture revolves around the academia, and a majority of the citizens pursue academic goals. This means that most aren't too concerned with becoming wealthy, except for when it's time to find research funding. But there is one character that has made it her goal to get as much mora as she can possibly get, Dori the merchant. From a very young age, Dori has been enamored with money and wealth, as she views mora as the only way to ensure one's survival. Because of this, she has built an enormous empire of wealth that continues to grow even today. But what are the examples of this wealth? Firstly, she owns a palace. The palace of Alcazazare, located in Dharma Forest, is entirely hers. The entire building was designed by famed architect Kave, and some notable characters like Tanari even consulted on it. Her business empire spans the entirety of Sumeru, the deserts, and even the far reaches of Teyvat, with most caravans being owned in some way by Dori. She's even wealthy enough to essentially build a theme park for her sumpter beast and even made the place profitable. Dori is also a specialized merchant, able to get products and wares that most others could not, and thus also commands a hefty premium for them. So because of this, she is an extremely wealthy person and very likely the richest among all the vision wielders of Sumeru. Before we end this video, I want to throw in one last bonus character. The Fatui are one of the main antagonists in the current storyline, and in all our dealings with them, they have been shown to be very well funded. In Mondstadt, they were able to rent out an entire building just for their own people, while in Liyue, they funded most of the Harbinger's activities and established their own lending bank. They were even able to finance and support Watatsumi Island in their rebellion against the shogunate. So how did they become so incredibly rich? Well, this has to do with the 9 Harbinger Pentalone. I won't get too much into his lore as that could be a whole video on its own, but Pentalone is the person in charge of all Snesnaya economic policies and finances. He is functionally angling to have each region rely on the Fatui for their finances and thus allow them to control each nation. The measure of his wealth is so extreme that he was once able to procure the fur of an extremely rare and extinct beast just to gift it to the Cryo Archon as a piece of clothing. Pentalone also works closely with the doctor and is likely the person financing his deranged experiments. Suffice to say, Pentalone is likely the richest antagonist we know so far, but as per the rules of the video, he is considered a bonus on this list since he's not a vision wielder and not currently playable. As I mentioned at the start of the video, this is just meant as a more fun view at the characters of Genshin Impact. Often there are lore details about these characters that I can't really include in my more standard videos, so occasionally it's fun to cover these in videos like this. If you think there are other rich people in Teyvat I may have omitted that deserve a place here, let me know in the comments. That brings this video to an end though, and if you enjoyed it, do consider liking and subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one. As usual, have a nice day.